It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday with Delilah in the foreground. Ever since I've started playing Sekiro, what is it? Something like Ninjas Die Twice or something like that. I did say, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. That's right. But ever since I've been playing that game, Delilah has been my bestest gaming buddy. And it's kind of funny because when Delilah was a kitten, I was playing God of War, I think it was 2. And so ever since then, violent video games make her extremely happy. And that's a little bit bizarre, right, honey? Come here. Yeah. Ow. Okay, your nails need to be done. But here's Delilah. Pretty girl. Yeah. She's just realized now we're not going to play video games. And she's kind of annoyed. Okay. And she took a chunk out of my arm. But yeah, my nose is red because I was just taking out the garbage and it's below freezing still in Canada in April. I kind of got frostbite on my hands because I went to see Shazam. And wow, it's super cute. It's a very humble superhero movie for kids about 8 to 15, I'd say, in the YouTube generation. It was kind of cool what they did because it's modern because there's YouTube and cell phones and all that stuff, but they made it look like a Spielberg film or The Goonies or something like that. Wow, my nose is really red. That's embarrassing. Yeah, they made it look like an 80s sort of all ages movie, kind of like Stranger Things. And I really liked it just because it wasn't pretentious and it didn't feel like the whole movie was shouting at me, and it was really funny. And sort of the moral of the story is that envy is the cardinal sin of the YouTube age. And I thought that was cool. And they did shout outs to Talkie Tawny and Mr. Mind, which, if you know anything about Shazam, aka Captain Marvel, is super cool. But it's about your feedback now. I just wanted to say I enjoyed it. Do not expect like an Avengers or even an Aquaman style blockbuster. It's not that. It's cute and it's funny and it takes the piss out of superheroes and it's kids. So I really, really enjoyed it. Because it felt humble. And speaking of humble, I want to give a shout out to whatever Kickstarter backer. I'm doing fulfillment of the Kickstarter and I mail merged the labels and I didn't see this label until I printed it out. There were some, lesson learned Kickstarter survey stuff. You got to watch it like a hawk. Somehow there were a bunch of weird things, so people had to fill out a bunch of useless fields, and people did it without complaint, but they put some hilarious stuff in those boxes. But somebody actually didn't want the loot, and instead of hitting no reward, they actually took a backer tier, and so they filled out their address label. Nobody, I do not want this, nowhere, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, United States. I thought that was very funny. So whoever this is, well done. Very funny. So on to your comments for the week. The Mortal Kombat discussion ended up being quite funny in the comments because the top comment was Dionysus guy saying, "I'm glad a female like you is talking about this. Your voice is going to be louder than us males. We would be deemed horn dogs, but you, what will they say?" Well, you answered. First one from Gene Gentry. Internalized misogyny. Woodworm said traitor to her own gender. Ralph Zarvaneri says she just wants pixelated boobs, apparently, which is actually what some jerk said to me on Twitter. And then someone responded, Vestin responded, yeah, and by the virtue of that being imputed that as a motivation, her stance can be a priori dismissed because of reasons. And I realized, if I wanted to see pixelated boobs, what's wrong with that? And then somebody's Guitar RT said, I wanted to read the OP comment and responses on Feedback Friday so badly. There you have it. And it just sort of goes on. And then somebody got, I don't know what they thought they were walking into, but it it just kind of went to shit. But, then another very popular comment by Stephen Boland said, you touch on a good point at around 22 minutes. NetherRealm claiming only sexists would like skimpy costumes is the same argument that only violent people like video games. The trope Mortal Kombat has been fighting since its conception, and they really shouldn't want to start it up again now. And then people, pointed out, Kratos is an expert on violent and sexy video games. The moment they went down with a more realistic aspect, they already lost my respect. MK is a hyper-violent game with gods, monsters, mutant demons that shred each other to pieces, basically gore porn, and yet toning down the sex appeal of female characters equals more realistic and practical. It's like they forgot video games are meant to be escapism from real life and get to fantasize yourself with these attractive-looking characters that can perform impossible tasks. Shake my head. Yeah. Moving on. The Jussie Smollett video, I'm not going to take too much time on. I thought I was going to get flamed really hard on this one, and I didn't. It's nice to be wrong that way. People in the comments, it gave me a lot of information that I have not been able to independently confirm. So I am not going to read it because I haven't had the chance to check if it's factual or not. And I just can't let that journalistic instinct die. Sorry, guys, but I will read Gene Gentry's twofer for Gene this week. I agree with you 100%. This was not a victimless crime or that the only person hurt was Jussie. Police have limited resources, and the cops are using those resources on a case that is ultimately a snipe hunt. That means that real cases are not being addressed, real victims are not getting the assistance they need, and real criminals are not being pursued. It also makes it that much harder for people who really have been victims of beatings and hate crimes to come forward because people doubt them. The boy cries wolf, but the wolves go and eat someone else. I can confirm that when I went to the police about a stalker, almost direct quote, they said, we actually have real crimes to solve. And when I asked them what bar would have to be set to come back to the police and not waste their time, a sergeant at 2 Division in York Region in the Greater Toronto area, and I will remember this till my dying day, assuming I don't get dementia, but because it was so surreal. The guy actually said, well, if they walked up to you in a room full of people and punched you in the face, that would be great. I shit you not. That's what a sergeant with York Regional Police actually said to me. And I said, wait a minute, isn't the whole purpose of criminal harassment laws to avoid violence actually being perpetrated against me? And then he stumbled all over the place. Well, by great, I didn't mean great. Yeah. Real experience with a real York Regional Police sergeant. I shit you not. So, Gene, you are 100% correct that because of crap like this, people who are telling the truth, but don't have video and audio and email trails and all this stuff proving 100%, never mind beyond a shadow of reasonable doubt, but all doubt, we can't get taken seriously. We're left to our own devices because, the cops have real crimes. Like Jussie Smollett's was treated before we found out otherwise. Okay, moving on. The stuff I got in response to the Anthem stuff was kind of overwhelming in, how do I put this? This is actually important to people. This isn't just one of those, haha, something failed, let's all point and laugh. People are legitimately upset that BioWare fucked up again, apparently out of pure hubris. And there were a couple of snarky comments that I caught about, Gamergaters swallowing their bile, having to compliment Jason Schreier. I want to say for the record that I completely disagree with that characterization. Having read, and there were a lot of comments this week, but having read a few dozen on this one, people that I did not expect to be as gracious you know, you guys said you don't like his op-eds, and that's completely fair, and you don't like his reviews, and that's completely fair, but when it comes right down to it, he's a good journalist. And there were people saying that they just wish he didn't berate gamers so much. And I want to give sort of some background on that. If you look at Jason Schreier's Twitter feed, you would know he works for Kotaku primarily because he mainly promotes his work that gets republished in the New York Times. There's obviously some sort of publication sharing, or I don't know, but you know, my piece in the New York Times about this, he pumps that up. He clearly has that sort of envy, as I pointed out. It's the sin of our age. Envy of real reporters. And so he is really vying to be a New York Times reporter instead of a Kotaku reporter. And I'll never forget talking to some developers who actually had their games featured in the New York Times and thought, these are fairly small studios, like indie games, and they thought they were going to get all these sales because, you know, the New York Times is one of those papers of record. It's very prestigious. But what they found out is that people who will go out and read articles about video games and buy video games based on those articles don't read the New York Times. And so the people who do read the New York Times clearly have a narrative that they already subscribe to. I mean, you know, it's a bit of a hoity-toity paper, let's face it. I look through some of the recipes and it's like, who has this kind of time? Who has like 50 minutes to prepare a dish on a weekday? Like, my God. I do save the recipes, I admit, because I do like to cook, and then I never prepare them because I don't have time. Yeah, this is the sort of stuff that I was never good at as a journalist. The idea of you have to sort of pander to the prestige and always aim higher. And I mean, one of the things I discovered about myself during the bad times of like 2014, 2015, was that I'm pretty much a gamer first and everything else second. And that's just me. I can't pander that way. I can't forget that part of myself that way. And segueing away from something kind of shitty into something very good, I was reminded of that again yesterday, if you guys watching this now, when I streamed Sekiro on Twitch. And it was very early game. I basically got it past the tutorial into the first real part of the game, so up to the first boss and a little bit beyond, where it descended into a lot of furry porn jokes. I'm not kidding, because some of the enemies are these giant black roosters. I'm not kidding. You can imagine where the jokes went. And so I started making jokes, and there are these wolves in the game. They're actually the smartest enemies I've encountered so far. But I made some joke about, well, everybody knows that wolves are assholes. Like, you know, I'm just being an idiot, just taking the piss. There was a regular in the chat whose screen name is like Chaos, and he goes, "Hey, I take offense to that." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." Like, furry love. This is a channel of furry acceptance. It was just funny. I'm like, "I'm so sorry, dude. I was just kidding." But a good time was had by all. But there was a moment when I took on the first boss, and of course I got my ass handed to me like 6 or 7 times. That might be conservative before I figured out what I was doing. And someone in the chat was like, "I failed to see how this is fun." And shortly after that, I kind of figured it out. I'm like, "Guys, I need to ignore the chat. I need to focus." And I went in and I finally got it. I finally caught the rhythm of it. And it was like, you know, people in the chat going, this is intense. That was intense. And it was like a moment. And then, of course, you know, I beat the first general and the whole chat went crazy. And so, you know, for that person, they understood in that moment, like, this is the appeal of that game. And that was really cool. Like, it was the first time I've really felt like I understood gaming as spectator sport. I still have real issues with some of these sort of exploitative elements of esports, in that these kids have to sacrifice a lot at a very critical point in their lives for what may seem like a lot of money at the time, but really isn't. And I'm, as an older gamer, and I'm willing to admit that, I'm concerned about that, because these kids, young adults, clearly have a lot of talent, and I'm just worried that they're being burned out before they even reach the prime of their lives. But, you know, the whole Twitch thing where somebody's just, you know, farting around playing games who may be half decent about it, that I'm like, all right, you know, it wasn't competitive, it was shared. Like, some people in the chat that had played the game before were giving me little tips on things and things like, which were very helpful. And one person said, okay, if I watch further, it's going to be spoilers, so I got to go, because they weren't that far ahead in the game yet. And it was just cool. Like, the camaraderie was really awesome. You know, it's not the typical multiplayer thing of, you suck, noob, go home. This is the point of hard games. Everybody sucks. Sucking is part of it. So it was more like, you know, she'll get it, you know, and then it's like this collective triumph when it happens. That's gaming. That's gaming to me. And, you know, to have that sort of, I don't understand why this is fun. And then, you know, when I finally got the boss, I'm like, that's why it's fun. The payoff makes it fun. And then there was a whole debate on Twitter about whether you're supposed to enjoy the journey. And I admit, having farted around for about 45 minutes just on my own after the Twitch stream suddenly died because my Dropbox decided to sync at that moment and cut off all other internet. That sucked. But farting around on my own and getting some of like the whirlwind attacks and unlocking like the skill tree and stuff like that, it actually is a very fun journey. It's not linear. You have to like bop back and forth to sort of your home base and, you know, turn in those prosthetic things and build up and turn in the gourd seeds and all that stuff. It's a very much, you know, go back to go forward kind of experience. It's very much like the Dark Souls games and Bloodborne and all that stuff. But it is very much... it's a grind, but it's a grind in kind of a fun way, because every time you run the gauntlet of a level, you get better at it, and you feel yourself getting better at it. Which I'm one of those people who needs a challenge, and it's like the perfect time for me to play this game right now. I haven't finished Spider-Man. I dropped it for Sekiro. I will finish Spider-Man. I'm late game in Spider-Man, but I'm like, I gotta try this because there's so much controversy about it. But yeah, it was a really cool moment on Twitch. I'm gonna continue it, I think, for a couple more sessions, just because it was fun, and people seemed interested. There's one thing, and this is the final question. I always like to give you guys a question. You know, you give me feedback, and then I ask for feedback. There's an article about Alita Battle Angel, and it's on the Mary Sue, and I don't want to actually say what it's about because it may trigger people, but for those of you who know what it's about, do you want on Monday a video on it? I am torn, and I'm going to tell you why I'm torn. I read the article, And it seems very much like just an emotional response. And it's easy to say, well, that's not very professional. And on one level, there's a case to be made there. But having been there, having been just sort of drowned by the haterade, before I learned how to deal with it, I can sort of emotionally understand where the writers of that article are emotionally, even though I don't agree with them on the facts necessarily. And so I am inclined to just sort of leave it alone because I do empathize. I don't know what's gained. However, I have to balance empathy with the people who read the article or heard about the article and were very hurt by it, because that's a valid emotion too. And I don't want to say one group of people's feelings is valid and another's isn't. So I'm going to watch the comments until Sunday when I record Monday's content. Let me know if you want me to go through that article, if you will find it healing to go through it. If there's enough people that feel strongly that, you know, there will be benefit to it, I'll do it. So let me know. Until then, have a really good weekend. If you want to go see a movie, you can do worse than Shazam. Like I said, don't go in expecting a big, like, extravaganza, like Infinity War or Shazam, or like Aquaman or Black Panther or anything like that. If you like Stranger Things, you'll probably like this movie, or like Goonies. It felt a lot like Goonies to me too. There are 2 or 3 gamer references in it that they do not attempt to explain, and I burst out laughing, and it was awesome. So until then, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. A lot of people have been joining since I started putting them earlier in the videos. It actually made a difference. So there we go. Answer given on that one. Thanks for watching.